You might find it a bit strange to hear an old person say, "I stay away from people." It sounds as if I've shut the door to the world, as if I'm sulking or harboring resentment towards someone. But no, not at all. I still smile every time my grandchild climbs into my lap and tells innocent little stories. I still feel touched when someone calls just to ask, "How are you doing?" My heart still warms when a neighbor brings over a plate of treats and says, "It's a beautiful day. Let's share a bite." I stay away from people, but not because I've lost faith in them. I do so because I've found something deeper, something that perhaps through all those busy years I never had the chance to realize: peace. With age, one needs less. No need for noise, no need to stand out, no need for praise or applause. One only needs to live with oneself, fully, wholly, and quietly, like a river that no longer longs to rush to the sea. I'm not sharing these things to complain. I'm telling them because I believe that somewhere out there, maybe it's you, someone is feeling the same way I do. Tired of the crowds, suffocated by hollow conversations, and yearning for a private sky where the heart can finally breathe. If you give me a few minutes, I'll tell you a story. Not a story about growing old, but a journey to reclaim the most precious thing in life: time. Number one, time has become more precious than ever. When I was young, I rarely thought about time. It felt like a river that flowed endlessly, always full, with nothing urging me to hurry. I used to waste it freely, the way people squander summer sunlight without realizing that winter will eventually come. I spent hours on meaningless conversations, directionless relationships, and work done just for the sake of doing it. Now, at the age of 80, I no longer think of time as something abstract. It has become a quiet but very real companion. A companion who never waits for me, who never comes back if I am careless or indifferent. I feel time in the gentle ticking of the old clock on the wall, in the slow morning light slipping through the door crack. In each silent moment I sit sipping tea without needing to say anything to anyone. Every day I wake up is a day worth being grateful for. Every gentle movement of my body is a reminder that I am still alive, still able to choose how I want to live the rest of my life. I once thought that living meant doing as much as possible, meeting as many people as I could, and always staying busy. Now, I understand that fullness is not about how many things happen in a day, but how many of them I truly feel. I choose mornings alone with a hot cup of tea and an old book. I choose slow afternoon walks beneath the familiar shade of old trees. I choose not to attend noisy gatherings, not to show up at awkward celebrations, not because I'm avoiding others, but because I've learned that time is no longer abundant enough for me to live superficially. When I was young, I thought there would always be a tomorrow to fix things, to call an old friend, to live differently. Now I understand that tomorrow isn't always guaranteed. Time is no longer a promise, but a gift. And like any precious gift, I don't want to waste it anymore. I save my time for the things that warm my heart. A handwritten letter, a conversation with someone sincere, a moment watching the sunset without needing to take a photo. I no longer chase what I once thought was important. I only keep what makes me feel truly alive. Number two, relationships change, and so do I. There is something I've taken nearly a lifetime to accept. Not all relationships are meant to last. Some people who were once an inseparable part of my life suddenly disappeared like a change in the wind. There was no argument, no explanation, just that we no longer walked the same path. When I was young, I believed that friendship, family bonds, or love, if sincere enough, would be unbreakable. I did everything I could to hold on to those I cared about. I texted, I called, I showed up in person just to ask a simple question. How have you been lately? But gradually I realized I was clinging to relationships that only lived in memory. I was the only one holding on to the thread, while the other end had long since slipped away without me noticing. And I grew tired. There were people I once considered like family. People I had cried for, laughed with, and sacrificed for, just to see them happy. But then I came to understand that someone's presence in your life doesn't always mean they're meant to stay. Maybe their role had been fulfilled. Maybe both they and I had changed. And so have I. I'm no longer someone who tries to please everyone. I no longer force myself to smile through small talk at gatherings where every conversation barely scratches the surface. I no longer feel obligated to stay in touch just to avoid being seen as cold. I've started to choose. I choose to keep the relationships that make me feel at ease. No need for many words, just sincerity. I cherish those who remember me with a simple message. It's a beautiful day. How are you? I value those who don't demand my constant presence, yet are quietly there whenever I need them, steadfast and complete. I've also learned to let go, without blame, without regret. For those who've left, I'm grateful they were once here. For those who've stayed, I treasure them like rare gifts. I may not remember everyone who has passed through my life, but I do remember the feeling of being treated with kindness, with a genuine embrace, with a silence that needed no explanation. Relationships change, and so do I. But within that change, I feel I'm drawing closer to the true nature of others and myself. Number 3, trust, the most fragile mirror. If there is anything that has made me more cautious with each passing year, it is trust. When I was young, I trusted people easily. I believed everyone was like me, sincere, kind, and true to their word. I opened my heart with innocence, never thinking about the need to protect myself. But life taught me that some wounds don't come from accidents. They come from the very people we once trusted most. A friend who once swore to stand by me through anything turned away when hardship came. A family member I thought would always be there quietly, let go without a word. These moments of broken trust were not loud, but they left deep, lingering cracks inside me. I was once angry, once blaming, once hurt to the point of never wanting to open up again. But after many years, I realized I could not live with a heart forever closed. I did not want to become someone who doubts everything or lives in such guardedness that I could no longer feel the warmth of human connection. So I learned how to trust again, but in a different way. I no longer trust quickly and give everything from the start. I listen more, look more closely, and pay attention even to the smallest details in how people treat each other. I don't expect anyone to be perfect, but I've learned to keep a safe distance for myself. I choose carefully and slowly, and I always listen to my intuition. Sometimes, doubt is not a sign of negativity, but a sign of a heart that has been hurt and is trying to protect itself. And yet, despite past disappointments, I still believe kindness has never truly disappeared. I've met strangers who helped me pick up dropped items on the street, a young nurse who held my hand when I was in pain at the hospital, a neighbor who wasn't close to me but always remembered my birthday. Those small moments moved me beyond words. They reminded me that trust still exists. It just needs to be placed in the right hands. At this age, I don't build walls to shut people out, but I do build gates. Gates strong enough to keep out harm, but open enough to let in light and goodness. I no longer trust as easily as I did in my youth, but every time I do trust now, it is genuine, and that makes it more precious than ever. Number 4, the world changes. I withdraw. I have lived long enough to witness the world transform completely. Things that were once standards, once the foundation of human life, are now only memories. I remember a time when neighbors called each other by name, when you didn't need an appointment to knock on someone's door for tea or a bowl of porridge. I remember afternoons when the whole neighborhood sat outside, children running and laughing, adults chatting warmly, no one checking the time, no one thinking about social media or work emails. Back then, people connected through eye contact, through smiles, through the comfort of sitting together in silence without feeling awkward. Now, I look out from the window of a high-rise apartment and see faces pass by each other without leaving a trace. Everyone is busy and rushed as if being pushed forward by some invisible machine. People live in the same building without knowing each other's names and ride the same elevator without greeting one another. I feel like a stranger in the very world where I've spent almost my entire life. I don't reject change. I know technology brings convenience. I understand society must move forward. I'm even grateful for the apps that let me video call my grandchildren far away and the social media platforms that allow me to see old friends despite oceans between us. But I cannot deny that something has been lost. Something deeply human, authentic, and intimate has faded behind touchscreens and emotionless messages. I don't want to chase after things that exhaust my heart. I've begun to withdraw, not to escape, but to protect what remains of sincerity. I turn off my phone at night, letting the room rest in true silence. I go to the park during quiet hours to hear the birds instead of traffic. I limit how much news I consume, not because I don't care, but because I don't want my heart to bear unnecessary disturbances. The world changes, people change, and the rhythm of life changes. But I choose to hold on to a small part of the old world, a world where kindness didn't need to be recorded on video, where goodness didn't need to be liked, and where simply being present together was enough. I don't resent modern life. I'm simply stepping gently out of the whirlpools that pull me away from my inner peace. And in the moment I choose to step back, I don't feel lost. I feel like I'm coming home. Number 5. Being alone is no longer loneliness. There was a time when I used to fear being alone. To me back then, a room without voices, a meal with only one pair of chopsticks, an evening without anyone by my side all felt like signs of lack, of loneliness I constantly tried to avoid. I used to fill my time with appointments, gatherings, and even small talk I knew would leave no trace in my heart, simply because I feared silence. I feared the sound of my thoughts when there was no one left to talk to. But as time passed, I began to realize something simple I once refused to believe. Being alone does not mean being lonely. On the contrary, it is in the quietest moments that I most clearly feel the presence of myself. I've learned to enjoy a peaceful morning with a hot cup of tea and soft sunlight streaming through the window. I find joy in listening to the wind rustling through the trees, the birds calling to each other down the alley, and even the ticking of the clock reminding me that I am still alive, still breathing, and truly present in this moment. I no longer seek happiness in crowded places or try to prove that I am still socially active. I find fullness in seemingly simple things. Wiping down the ancestral altar, an afternoon spent knitting, a night rereading an old letter I once wrote many years ago. These silences no longer frighten me because they are no longer empty. They are a space where I speak to myself, where I remember what has passed and give thanks for it all. I still love people. I still cherish sincere conversations, long embraces, and moments when someone stops by just to sit in silence and share a cup of tea. But what's different now is that I no longer need those things to feel worthy. I no longer equate being surrounded with being happy. I've come to realize that a person can feel lost in a crowd and yet feel incredibly at peace sitting alone. At this age, I no longer fear quietness. I welcome it as an old friend, one who never hurts me, never demands anything from me, and simply stays by my side, quietly and sincerely. Being alone is no longer loneliness. It is the space where I return to myself in the most complete way possible. Number 6, why I distance myself from people. It may sound extreme, but the truth is I don't distance myself from people because I hate them. I distance myself because I've lived long enough to understand that not everyone in my life is meant to stay. There was a time when I lived to please others. I would rearrange my schedule just to help an acquaintance. I would attend every gathering simply because I was afraid someone might feel sad if I didn't show up. I listened to stories that showed no regard for my feelings, just because I believed it was my duty to maintain the relationship. But then I realized that living like that meant trading away parts of myself. I've walked away from social events feeling empty inside, more drained than happy. I've stayed up at night feeling hurt by how someone treated me, while they had likely already forgotten what they said. I've tried holding on to fading relationships only to realize I was the only one still trying. I learned that kindness doesn't mean I have to be constantly present, and compassion doesn't mean allowing others to cross the boundaries that protect my well-being. Distancing myself from people does not mean I'm cold or indifferent. It is an act of love for myself. I step away from those who carry negative energy, who complain endlessly but never change, and who only seek me out when they need something. I also step back from relationships that force me to pretend everything is fine, to smile through discomfort, to explain why I choose a life that doesn't fit the norm. I no longer feel the need to please everyone. Now, I choose to live in alignment with my true emotions. I say no when I feel uncomfortable. I stay silent when I don't want to pretend to listen. I stay home alone on weekends when my heart craves peace more than loud laughter. Strangely, the more I step away from things that no longer fit, the lighter I feel. I'm no longer afraid of being misunderstood, no longer sad when someone turns away. I understand that peace doesn't come from being liked by many, but from loving myself and living according to what I truly need. I still keep the relationships that matter, but I no longer cling to what has already run dry. A small circle with a few genuine people is enough. When I meet someone now, it's because I want to, not because I feel I have to. Because of that, every meeting becomes more precious, more meaningful, and more real. I distance myself from people not because I no longer need anyone, but because I finally know who is enough. Number 7. Is it just me who feels this way? Sometimes I sit quietly alone, looking back on the long road I've traveled, and I ask myself, is it just me who feels this way? Am I the only one who finds myself slowly drifting away from the crowd, preferring silence over noise, cherishing private moments more than chaotic gatherings? Or is this a natural part of life that everyone eventually goes through if they live long enough, truthfully enough, and with enough heartbreak? I used to live as if I had to stay connected to everyone. I tried to fulfill every role: the good friend, the model family member, the one who was always ready to show up when needed. But in the end, I realized I had sacrificed too much to maintain that image. I was exhausted inside but afraid to complain. I buried sadness and hid disappointment just to keep peace with people who no longer truly cared about who I was. As time passed, I began to see that separation is not a failure. It is a necessary filtering to protect the soul from being worn down by meaningless things. I stopped feeling guilty for turning down invitations. I no longer thought of myself as someone with a problem for choosing to stay home instead of going to parties. I learned to listen to the voice within me and to understand that when it says I don't want to, that alone is reason enough. I believe many people of my generation feel the same, even if they haven't said it out loud or haven't had the chance to sit down and admit it to themselves. We are not lazy, not closed off, nor have we become overly difficult. We have simply been through enough to realize that the most important thing is not how many people are around us, but how many truly stay when we are silent. We choose carefully now because life is no longer long enough to waste on things that do not bring warmth. We know what we need: respect, sincerity, and peace. Nothing more, nothing less. And if you, no matter your age, are also finding yourself stepping away from shallow relationships, small talk, and things that only leave you feeling drained, then you are not alone. You are entering a different stage of life, one where depth matters more than noise, where you begin to return to yourself and find comfort in that. Others may not understand. They may call you distant or different. But you know what? Being different is not something to fear. Not living like the majority doesn't mean you are wrong. Sometimes it's the clearest sign that you are living truthfully. Number 8, I embrace this chapter gently yet proudly. If life were a book, then this chapter, the chapter of turning 80, is neither loud nor dramatic, no longer filled with intense twists and turns like in my youth. And yet, strangely, it is the chapter where I feel I write the most honestly, live the most truthfully, and feel every word of life most clearly. I no longer chase after grand things. I no longer measure my worth by what I accomplish or what others think of me. I once urgently sought to achieve something, eagerly longed for recognition, and struggled to know who I was without playing some kind of role in others' eyes. But then time worked its quiet magic. It taught me there is no need to rush, that life is not a race to catch up with others, and that sometimes all it takes is one deep breath and a calm heart to call a day complete. Now I live slowly, deeply, and sincerely. I know what I like, and I'm no longer afraid to turn away from what doesn't suit me. I no longer feel guilty when I say, I'm not joining, or I just want to stay home. I've stopped doing things to be liked, and started doing things that help me like myself more. Each morning when I wake and see the soft sunlight spilling across the floor and hear the wind rustling through the trees outside my window, I smile simply because I can still feel. I don't know how much time I have left, but that doesn't scare me. On the contrary, it makes every present moment more precious. I live not with regret, but with gratitude. I am grateful for those who passed through my life, even if only for a brief moment. I'm grateful for the things that once hurt me because they made me stronger. I'm grateful even for the times I fell because they taught me how to stand again without anyone's help. I no longer need a plan for the distant future. I just need a day that is peaceful enough, real enough, and filled with enough humanity. I embrace this chapter of my life not with resignation, but with pride. Pride that I've made it here, not perfect, but whole. Not grand, but complete. I have paused, but I have not collapsed. I have gone quiet, but I have not given up. And I have chosen to live in my way, quietly perhaps, but never fading. This chapter to me is the most worth living, because at last, I've stopped trying to make everyone else happy at the cost of forgetting myself. I choose myself. I hold on to peace the way one holds on to a small flame in the heart, not brilliant, but enough to warm me every day.